Tell me if this sounds familiar. All your homies are asking you to come play Monster Hunter Wilds with them, but you've never played a Monster Hunter before and you have no idea what you're doing, and more importantly, you don't know what weapon to choose. If I'm describing you, well, worry no more. In honor of Monster Hunter Wilds dropping, which my lovely wife has been waiting an eternity for, I'm gonna go over every weapon in the game today. This won't be an in-depth guide, but we'll go over the vibe of each weapon, what they do well, the basic gameplay loop of how to use them, what they bring to the table, stuff like that. Hopefully, after watching, you'll have a much better idea of what weapon you want to try to learn to use in Monster Hunter. There are 14 weapons in total, so let's get to work. And FYI, my current favorite weapon to use will be the last one we go over. Let's start with a classic, Sword and Shield. The Sword and Shield is for players who essentially want to be a jack of all trades and be pretty damn good at most of them. Sword and Shield does it all. Slash damage, elemental damage, blunt damage, blocking, all while having short animation commitments, which enables you to play in a more nimble and reactive manner. Sword and Shield also has the unique ability to let you use items without needing to sheathe your weapon first, allowing you to quickly heal, set traps, use supportive items, and so on. While your melee reach is short, you have the ability to make directional pivots mid-combo, so you can assault moving or flailing monsters relentlessly. Unlike some other weapons we'll go over today, the Sword and Shield has no gauges, no files, no charging mechanics. It's just you and the monster, mano a mano, knight versus dragon, so to speak. TLDR, try out the Sword and Shield if you want a straightforward, beginner-friendly weapon that allows you to be versatile and do most things fairly well. Next up, how about a classic, the Great Sword? The Great Sword is arguably the poster child weapon for Monster Hunter. While you definitely won't be as mobile as the Sword and Shield people, you will be dishing out massive raw damage with big charge-up hits that are oh so satisfying when you connect. High mobility weapons are move fast and spam spam spam. You, with the Great Sword, are more like a Terminator, slow, determined, but inevitable and powerful. You may not find success as immediately as you would with other lighter weapons, but as you learn more about a monster's movements and where to position yourself in combat, you will become deadlier and deadlier with the Great Sword. It's all about positioning and timing for you, winding up and charging that perfect strike that you really feel the impact of, just to see those big, beautiful damage numbers pop up while sending the monster crashing to the ground and writhing in pain. Also, take note that in Monster Hunter, you can actually chop off pieces of a monster you're hunting mid-fight. Brutal, yes, but kind of like a nice mid-activity fight reward. And the Great Sword is actually quite good at doing this, and with practice, you can target certain body parts for mid-fight chopping. You also have the ability to throw out tackles mid-combo, a quick little shoulder charge looking move that can dish out stun damage if performed on a monster's head, and even gives you a touch of super armor so you can take hits with no flinch. TLDR, use the Great Sword if you don't like the idea of hitting fast but hitting hard. You want to be a big swing damage dealer as well as stagger enemies routinely in combat with a big frickin' sword. Alright, we've covered slow and hard. How about light and fast? Dual blades. Whoever coined the phrase death by 1,000 cuts would love the dual blades. You are a high-speed, high-mobility demon, whirling and twirling around the monster as you slash at it repeatedly with fast, light cuts. And while each swing deals minor damage, you are swinging so fast and hitting so often that it all starts to add up really quick. Your dodge is replaced by a dash, which improves your overall ability to evade attacks and weave in and out of the battle. The dual blade unique mechanic is the demon and archdemon modes. Translation, you hit a button and improve your DPS, that would be damage per second, at the cost of a continual stamina drain. Hits while in that mode increase the demon gauge, which when maxed activates archdemon mode. That mode improves your base performance whether or not you have demon mode active. The dual blade playstyle is all about moving fast, being elusive, and managing your stamina while slashing away repeatedly. TLDR, use the dual blades if you enjoy the idea of through-the-roof attack speed and dashing around the monster with well-timed bursts of agility. Alright, we've been talking damage for a little bit. How about something for the support players out there? Introducing the Hunting Horn. Quite possibly one of the most unique and hilarious weapons in Monster Hunter. You are quite literally bashing monsters over the head with a giant saxophone. I'm only half kidding, but the Hunting Horn is far more than it appears. When not bashing away, you actually have the ability to play songs in the heat of combat, and each tune you play yields a different buff for your teammates. You're kind of a violent bard, so to speak. Song buffs can do many things: attack power buffs, health boosting, earplugs, aka the ability to not get stunned when a monster angrily roars at you point blank, status resistances, and more. A good horn main knows the right songs to play in order to counter a monster's strengths while boosting your team's overall capabilities in just the right way. The hunting horn might not be the most lethal weapon on the rack, but if you wield it and know which buffs to dish out when, you'll be appreciated AF on the battlefield. TLDR, play the hunting horn if you like the idea of buffing the hell out of your teammates on the regular and being the player that everyone loves having on the team. Or if you just want the comedy factor of slamming a dinosaur with a large wind instrument. What's that? You want to bash things on the head, but you ain't got the time to learn songs? How about the hammer? Blessed be the hammer mains. So simple, so pure. Your playbook is one word, likely scrawled in crayon: bonk. You get in close and you swing away like Joaquin Phoenix at the end of Signs. Thanks to a new grapple hook tech, you can actually close the gap on monsters relatively easily when charging up. But yeah, your goal is to bash creatures in the head with high damage charge up attacks. At its peak, a good hammer wielder can dictate the flow of the fight with its ability to break body parts off, exhaust the monster, and most importantly, dish out stun, aka when the monster is just dazed and confused, likely from taking too many blunt force strikes to the dome. If you're accurate and doing your job, you can turn even the toughest monsters into tired sitting ducks for you and your buddies to collectively wail on. Plus, there's few things more satisfying than swinging and smashing things with a 100-pound golf club. TLDR, use the hammer if you like the idea of winding up big blunt force mega hits and making a monster collapse to the ground and see stars while you in the squad go to town. Perhaps something more complex, the charge blade. If you're the kind of gamer looking for a deeply rewarding learning curve that allows for a mixture of offense, defense, and explosive burst damage, look no further. The charge blade is a difficult weapon to learn, but very rewarding once you have. It's actually two weapons in one. By default, it's a funny looking sword and shield, but you can combine the two together to form a giant, long-reaching axe. It operates on a file system. Translation: build up charges, aka files, in sword and shield mode, then transform that puppy into a giant axe and spend those built up charges, usually in the form of awesome damage. It's a beautifully complex dance, but oh so satisfying when you figure out the flow of the weapon. Icing on the cake is using the super fun Savage Axe mode, where the head of the weapon in axe form can spin around like a buzzsaw, really putting the pain on whatever creature you're fighting. TLDR, go for the charge blade if you feel confident about learning a somewhat complex weapon, knowing that the rewards will be sweet if you do. A quality mixture of defense, offense, and burst damage. Like weapons that are kinda two things in one? Alright, how about another option in the same vein, the Switch Axe. The Switch Axe is two weapons in one, but it has the ability to seamlessly change between axe and sword forms even mid-combo. The axe form boasts longer reaching swings with excellent vertical and horizontal range, gap closing, and decent power. The sword form boasts fair speed and strong attacks for high DPS. Attacking in axe mode builds up your switch gauge, while attacking in sword mode consumes the switch gauge. Attacking in sword mode also builds up an amped state. Thus, a master switch axer is constantly switching states to whatever is more appropriate at the time. Axe mode for building the gauge, doing damage to hard to reach spots, and closing the gap, and sword mode for DPS windows and building up amped. Each switch axe will come with an attached file type, which shines through when sword mode reaches the amped state. The sword will become empowered, dealing high damage of a damage type boosted by a file. This can allow the switch axe to eventually do some of the highest elemental damage across all weapons, ending in a highly explosive and damaging elemental discharge attack. TLDR, try out the switch axe if you don't mind the idea of learning a potentially complex weapon with a high elemental damage ceiling. How about something for those who like a little vertical mobility in their gameplay? Introducing the insect glaive. Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, kinda literally, because not only can you essentially go airborne and attack from above, but you also have a kinsect companion when using this weapon. Your kinsect can nab essence from various monster parts and bring it to you, granting you buffs. Your kinsect friend also has the ability to pester the monster for minor but consistent damage and leave kinsect dust that you can erupt for different effects depending on the kinsect. Kinsect micromanagement can be a downside or an upside depending on your playstyle. Some players may not wish to F around too much with needing to worry about building up the kinsect buff, but others may find it fun and appealing. Oh, and most importantly, you can plunge your glaive into a monster and then pole dance and swing around for a bit, so that's fun. TLDR, try out the insect glaive if you enjoy high-flying aerial combat with a buggy kind of vibe. Hey, how about some range? Sure, how about the light bowgun? Unlike its big brother, which we'll get to to shortly, the light bowgun is ideal for the player who wants ranged damage but still wants to be relatively light on their feet. Make no mistake, even though you'll be dealing ranged damage, that doesn't mean you'll be tagging up a monster from a football field away like a sniper in Battlefield. Bowguns have an ideal damage range, and while it's somewhat far compared to another ranged option we'll cover later, you'll still be close enough that you should be on your toes in case of danger. Thankfully, you can move around while you pepper the beast with an interesting variety of ammunition that you can cycle through in combat. Different ammo means different damage types, or even having the ability to apply status types to a monster by shooting it, poisoning it, paralyzing it, sticky bombing its wings, using pierce ammo for long monster hurt boxes, and potentially healing and buffing teammates. Again, because of its light weight, you can still zoom and slide around between shots to evade or reposition for better angles. TLDR, try the light bowgun if you want to deal ranged damage that might feel a tad more rapid fiery while still allowing you to be relatively mobile. And you probably knew this was coming, the heavy bowgun. Yes, whereas both the bowguns deal in the business of ranged damage, the heavy bowgun is just slower and less mobile overall. The good news is that your vibe is typically dealing higher damage per shot, as well as having some more explosive options as well. The slower movement and slower dodging is kind of a drag, but if you'd rather be a tad more sluggish and hit noticeably harder, then hey, look no further. TLDR, try the heavy bowgun if you want to give ranged damage a try and you don't mind the thought of lugging around a weapon of mass destruction. Alright, so what if you like the idea of shooting a monster, but maybe you want to be a little more up close and personal? Well, how about the Gunlance? The Gunlance is an odd hybrid of close range melee combat and close range blasting a monster point blank with explosive gun shells that fire straight out of your weapon. You won't be very precise as you dish out heavy slams, wide sweeps, and the ability to blast critters in the face with nearly every attack. But then again, you don't need to be precise with a weapon like this. Oh, and those blasts do true damage, by the way, ignoring monster resistances and allowing you to overcome the defenses of even the most heavily armored beasts. You might not be as defensive as your little brother, who we'll talk about shortly, but you more than make up for it in offensive devastation. TLDR, try out the Gunlance if you like explosions, and more explosions. Alright, so you like the idea of a shield and lance type weapon, but you don't want to shoot, you want to stab. How about the lance? Now you might be wondering to yourself, okay, well, if the lance is just a gun lance that can't shoot explosive shells, why the hell would I want to use that? And the answer is defense. Gobs and gobs of it. The lance turns you into an unmovable bastion that can block arena-wide monster attacks while your friends might only be able to desperately dodge or hide. You are a wall, and you specialize in never-ending retaliation, blocking attacks with your mighty shield and returning the favor in kind. At its peak, the lance is commonly considered the most sticky weapon in the game, allowing you to establish position and then stay there whether the monster likes it or not, relentlessly stabbing between blocks and counters. The ability to switch between mid and high level thrusts allows you to reach most any part of a monster with pinpoint precision that other weapons can only dream of. TLDR, try out the lance if you want to have wild levels of defense with the ability to plant yourself wherever you want as you counter and poke the beast forever. We're nearing the end, so how about some more flashy options? Introducing the longsword. Definitely a fan favorite in the franchise, the longsword looks kind of like a big katana and is a combination of both damage and finesse. Your combat with the longsword is kind of a rhythm, stabbing and slashing and countering as you build up something called spirit gauge. You use that spirit gauge meter to unleash spirit attacks, and when you have level 3 of spirit gauge, your attacks are at their deadliest and you're free to use your most powerful abilities. Those do a devastating amount of damage, but they also lower your spirit level by 1. And so begins your straightforward yet satisfying combat loop, where gameplay becomes all about reaching max spirit level, increasing and unleashing your built-up power over and over again. TLDR, try the longsword if you like engaging in an even measured dance of death akin to that of a samurai. And finally, my current favorite weapon on the rack, the bow. The bow is our final ranged combat weapon in Monster Hunter Wilds, and as I've mentioned before, don't conjure up an image of you shooting a target from miles away like a Skyrim sneak attack archer. Your bow's optimal range ain't that far away from the monster. Go too far away and you'll do significantly less damage. You're very much ranged, but very much in the fight. So why the bow over other ranged weapon options? Well, the light and heavy bowgun are fine, but they have to worry about something that you don't: ammo. Yup, bow users never have to worry about running out of arrows. You can shoot away forever and ever, dealing solid damage along the way. You will have some other things to manage though, including a meter that allows you to do fun things like tagging the monster with a sort of homing arrow that allows all your follow-up arrows to straight up not miss for the next few seconds. And don't think that this is a one arrow at a time, slowly plinking away type of deal, by the way. Plenty of your attacks fire multiple arrows in one shot, all while letting you be very mobile. You can also apply unique coatings to your arrows on the fly in combat, which can let you do things like hit harder or inflict status effects on a monster. You know, things like poison damage arrows and whatnot. Also, the bow in Wilds is phenomenal at breaking monster injuries, a fun in-combat mechanic. To be fair, any weapon can break injuries, but with the bow, you can target them with pinpoint accuracy to the point where the bow is almost the team's designated wound breaker. TLDR, play the bow if you like the idea of being a mobile, ranged damage dealer and want to dance around your enemy while raining down arrows onto them, and I mean that quite literally. To those of you watching who already have a main/favorite weapon, make a case for why you think a new player should try it down in the comment section. I will be dabbling in Monster Hunter Wilds content, so subscribe for more. Thank you very much for watching. Peace!